In the sprawling mansion of America's most celebrated billionaire, Grant Sterling, wealth was everywhere. Marble floors that gleamed like mirrors, gardens sculpted like artwork, and priceless paintings that whispered of centuries past. To outsiders, Sterling's life looked untouchable. A genius inventor, a man of limitless fortune, and a fiancée whose smile could light up every room she entered. Reporters called them perfect. Guests whispered that they were destined for greatness. But behind closed doors, perfection can be the sharpest disguise. Above the mansion's garage, in a modest apartment tucked out of sight, lived Helen Caldwell and her daughter, Maya. Helen was the quiet maid who managed the estate's order, and Maya, only 10 years old, grew up wandering corridors where she didn't belong, watching details no one else noticed. She was no ordinary child. Her late grandfather, a decorated soldier, had taught her one powerful lesson: pay attention to what others ignore. It was an ordinary afternoon when Maya's sharp eyes caught something unusual. A gift, wrapped in gold paper, adorned with a silk ribbon, was left casually on a desk. To most, it looked like nothing more than a token of affection. But Maya's instincts screamed otherwise. The weight wasn't right. The design was too deliberate. And when the ribbon shifted slightly, she noticed a detail others would have dismissed as decoration. Inside that gift was a secret, a hidden device with a single purpose: to watch, to listen, to expose. The discovery was small, almost invisible, but it held the power to bring down the empire of America's richest man. And Maya, the maid's daughter, was the only one who knew. The Sterling estate was more than just a mansion. It was a kingdom of glass and stone, perched high above the coastline like it owned the horizon. Visitors often gasped the moment they stepped through the wrought iron gates. The driveway curved for nearly a mile, lined with oak trees that had been imported from Europe, their branches forming a natural cathedral arch. By the time one reached the mansion itself, it felt less like arriving at a home and more like stepping into a legend. The front doors, carved from mahogany and fitted with brass handles polished daily by staff, opened into a marble foyer so bright it almost blinded newcomers. A chandelier of Austrian crystal hung above, its prisms scattering light into 1,000 tiny rainbows across the floor. To the press, to investors, to politicians who visited for banquets and charity events, this was a palace of genius. They saw Grant Sterling as the embodiment of American success. Brilliant, ambitious, and impossibly wealthy. His fiancée, Cassandra, played the role of perfection just as flawlessly. She was poised, elegant, and endlessly photographed in designer gowns. Together, they seemed untouchable. But perfection, when performed too well, begins to feel scripted. Helen Caldwell, the maid who managed the estate's quiet order, noticed the subtle cracks. A strained silence during dinners when Grant's attention lingered on his phone too long. The way Cassandra sometimes avoided his gaze when guests praised their unshakable bond. These details, invisible to outsiders, told Helen a truth she never dared voice. Money can build walls of marble, but it cannot hide tension forever. Maya, her 10-year-old daughter, absorbed the mansion with a different set of eyes. To her, the corridors weren't glamorous, they were puzzles. The pattern in the carpet that didn't quite match near the library. The mirror in the study that tilted ever so slightly, as if it had been moved recently. The sound of footsteps that didn't belong to any of the staff she knew. Where others saw splendor, Maya saw mysteries waiting to be solved. Life in the mansion was a strange balance between extravagance and silence. Servants moved like shadows, appearing only when needed, disappearing the moment tasks were. Meals were served on plates that cost more than most families earned in a month. Flowers were replaced daily, shipped from greenhouses halfway across the world. Every detail was curated, every imperfection erased. And yet, within this curated paradise, Maya often felt a chill, a sense that something lurked just out of sight, waiting. The estate itself seemed alive with secrets. Locked doors lined hallways no one was allowed to enter. Cameras watched every angle of the grounds, but curiously, not every corner of the mansion. Entire wings of the house were rarely used, cloaked in silence, their windows covered by heavy drapes. For a child with sharp instincts and a restless mind, it was both thrilling and unsettling. One evening, as Maya followed her mother through the grand hall after a banquet, she overheard guests whispering. "A perfection," one said, raising a glass. "The Sterling has it all." Maya turned her gaze to the chandelier above, its light sparkling in her eyes. She wondered, If everything was so perfect, why did it feel like the walls themselves were listening? Why did it feel as though the mansion was hiding something? Something big enough to shatter the image everyone admired. Maya didn't know it yet, but her instincts were sharper than anyone realized. And soon those instincts would uncover a truth powerful enough to collapse the empire of the man who seemed to have it all. Life above the garage was nothing like the opulence of the mansion, but for Helen and her daughter Maya, it was home. Their apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, and a living room where the furniture had been passed down from Helen's parents. Unlike the Sterling estate, where every object screamed wealth, this space whispered stories. A quilt, faded from years of use, warmed Maya's bed. Photographs of Helen's parents, including her late father in his military uniform, sat in simple frames on the shelf. To Maya, these modest details meant more than crystal chandeliers ever could. Maya was different from most children her age. While other kids spent afternoons glued to television screens or playing video games, Maya found comfort in quiet observation. She loved sitting on the edge of the window ledge, staring down at the mansion's gardens, noting how the staff moved, how deliveries arrived, how certain doors opened at odd times of the day. Nothing escaped her attention. It wasn't just curiosity, it was training, drilled into her by her grandfather before he passed away. Her grandfather had been a decorated soldier, a man who believed that awareness could save a life. Notice the details others overlook, he often told Maya. A danger doesn't announce itself. It hides in silence in the corners no one bothers to check. At first, Helen worried these lessons were too heavy for a little girl. But over time, Maya grew into them naturally, turning every day into a puzzle of patterns, clues, and quiet discoveries. Though Maya lived in the shadows of one of America's most powerful families, she never felt insignificant. In fact, her invisibility gave her strength. Guests and even Cassandra, the fiancée, barely noticed her presence, and Maya used that to her advantage. She lingered at the edges of conversations, catching fragments of words that hinted at things unsaid. She wandered halls others avoided, her small frame moving unnoticed. In silence, she collected knowledge. But Maya was still a child, innocence mixed with instinct. She loved reading mystery novels from the tiny library her grandfather left behind. She adored sketching the mansion's rooms, recreating them on paper with every little flaw included. Her notebooks were filled with floor plans, scribbles of overheard conversations, and doodles of objects that seemed out of place. To anyone else, they were just a child's drawings. But for Maya, they were records, pieces of a larger puzzle she hadn't yet solved. Helen worried about her daughter's sharpness. "You're too observant, sweetheart," she often whispered while brushing Maya's hair at night. Sometimes it's better not to see everything. Sometimes knowing too much can be dangerous." Maya would nod, but deep down she disagreed. To her, knowledge wasn't danger. And yet beneath her quiet strength, Maya was lonely. She longed for a friend her age, someone to share secrets with, someone who might understand the strange life she lived among wealth, yet apart from it. The mansion's children, cousins of Sterling, friends of Cassandra, rarely acknowledged her. To them, she was invisible, the maid's daughter. Maya accepted this role, but in her heart, she dreamed of a moment when she would no longer be overlooked. That moment was closer than she imagined. Her solitude, her sharp instincts, and her habit of noticing what others ignored were about to collide in a single discovery, one that would not only pull her into the center of Sterling's world, but also put her at the heart of a dangerous truth. For years, Maya had lived in the shadows. But soon the shadows would reveal a light so harsh it would burn everything in its path. It began as an ordinary afternoon, the kind of day when the estate moved like clockwork. Staff carried trays through the halls, gardeners trimmed roses along the pathway, and Cassandra prepared for yet another glamorous dinner party. The air was calm, the routines predictable, until a small box appeared where it didn't belong. Maya first noticed it on a polished mahogany desk in the study. Wrapped in gleaming gold paper, tied neatly with a silk ribbon, it seemed almost too perfect. The package looked deliberate, as though it wanted to be noticed, yet oddly no one acknowledged its presence. Guests passed by the study, staff cleaned around it, and Cassandra herself walked through the room without giving it a second glance. To anyone else, the box was a simple gift, But to Maya, its very stillness screamed suspicion. She had spent her life noticing what others overlooked, and this gift was wrong. The paper was flawless, yet the folds were too sharp, too measured. The ribbon was tied tight, not like a human hand would knot it, but like a machine had calibrated it. Even the weight of the box, when she lifted it slightly with her small hands, felt unnatural, too heavy for its size. Maya's mind raced back to her grandfather's teachings. The smallest details hold the loudest secrets, he had told her once as he showed her how to examine a locked trunk. She crouched by the desk, her fingers tracing the edges of the ribbon. Something about it seemed alive, like it was holding its breath. She tilted the box gently, and that's when she saw it, a glint, a tiny reflection peeking out from beneath the... At first she thought it was just metal from the ribbon clasp, but when she leaned closer, her breath caught. It wasn't decoration, it was glass, a lens. Her heart pounded in her chest. She touched it again, this time more carefully, and the realization hit her like thunder. This wasn't a gift at all. It was a device, a hidden camera disguised as a present, positioned perfectly to capture everything that happened in the study. The implications flooded her mind. Who placed it there? Was it Cassandra, the seemingly flawless fiancée who smiled a little too perfectly? Was it someone trying to monitor Sterling, the billionaire who trusted no one completely? Or was it an outsider, someone dangerous, who had found a way into the estate's carefully protected walls? Maya's instincts told her it wasn't random. Nothing inside the Sterling estate was ever random. This device was meant to be invisible to adults distracted by wealth and routine. But to her, it was glaringly obvious. She quickly glanced around the room. The chandelier above threw 1,000 reflections. The curtains swayed gently with the breeze, and still no one else noticed the ticking danger sitting in plain sight. She leaned closer, pressing her ear against the box, and heard it. A faint hum, the whisper of hidden electronics alive and working. Fear tugged at her chest, but so did excitement. For years she had been the overlooked child, wandering silently through corridors, collecting fragments of mysteries no one cared about. But this was different. This was real. She wasn't imagining patterns or chasing shadows. She had uncovered something tangible, something dangerous, something dangerous. Maya knew she had to tell someone. But who? Her mother would worry, maybe even scold her for prying. Sterling was powerful but unpredictable. And Cassandra, Maya's gut told her the fiancé was at the center of this. She closed her small fingers tightly around the ribbon, heart thudding in her chest. The mansion was filled with secrets, but this one was alive, watching, waiting, and now Maya had found it. Maya's discovery weighed on her all night. She couldn't sleep, tossing in her small bed above the garage, hearing her mother's steady breathing in the next room. The box with its glittering paper and cold, unblinking eye haunted her thoughts. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined it watching her, recording her, silently storing secrets no one was meant to see. By morning, Maya knew she couldn't keep it to herself. The question was, who would believe her? She was just the maid's daughter, a child most of the household ignored. To march up to the billionaire and announce she had uncovered a spy device seemed unthinkable. But silence was worse. The longer the camera sat in that study, the more it captured. And Maya had learned from her grandfather. When danger whispers, you cannot wait until it shouts. She waited until her mother went about her duties, polishing the grand staircase for that evening's guest. Maya slipped away, clutching her notebook where she had sketched the box and scribbled notes about the tiny lens. Her hands trembled as she walked through the halls, unnoticed by servants too busy with silver trays and polished glassware. The study door loomed in front of her. Inside, Grant Sterling sat at his desk, reviewing blueprints for his latest invention. His fiancée Cassandra stood nearby, scrolling through her phone, a perfect smile absent in the quiet of the room. For once, she looked restless, almost nervous. Maya stepped inside, her small voice breaking the silence. "Mr. Sterling, I need to show you something." The billionaire looked up, eyebrows raised. "Mia, what are you doing here?" Cassandra's gaze sharpened instantly. She lowered her phone, studying the girl with icy curiosity. Maya felt her throat tighten, but she forced the words out. "The gift on your desk, it isn't what it looks like. It's not just a present. There's a camera inside." The room froze. Sterling frowned, pushing his chair back. "A camera? Cassandra's lips parted slightly, a flicker of something, fear, annoyance, passing through her expression before she masked it with a light laugh. "A child's imagination," she said smoothly. as she probably saw a reflection or something shiny. But Maya stood her ground. Maya stood her ground. Her small hands shook as she held out her notebook, showing the sketch of the lens and the notes she had written. It's real. I saw it. I heard it humming. It's recording everything. Sterling's face darkened. He strode to the desk, snatching the box. With a sharp tug, he ripped away the ribbon and tore into the paper. Cassandra gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Not in surprise, Maya realized, but in panic. Inside the wrapping was no trinket, no harmless gift. It was exactly as Maya described. A hidden device, wires and lenses glinting under the chandelier's light. Sterling's jaw tightened, his hands gripping the box so hard his knuckles whitened. Who put this here? He demanded, his voice low, dangerous. Cassandra stepped forward, her tone sugar-coated yet trembling. A grant there must be some mistake. Anyone could have left it. A worker, a guest. But Sterling's eyes narrowed as he looked at her. The billionaire, who had built empires on noticing flaws in systems, suddenly seemed to notice the flaws standing right beside him. Her nervous shifting, her too easy dismissal, her presence in the study at the very moment Maya spoke. It all aligned like pieces of a puzzle. Maya stood silently, watching the storm gather. For the first time, the invisible maid's daughter had shifted the balance of power in the Sterling estate. And Cassandra knew it. The confrontation had begun, and no one in that study would leave unchanged. The room felt heavier than stone, silence pressing down like a weight no chandelier could brighten. Grant Sterling stood at his desk, the torn wrappings scattered like confetti at his feet, the exposed camera in his hand. His eyes, sharp and calculating, flicked between the device and the woman he once believed he would marry. Cassandra's composure, polished to perfection for the cameras and charity galas, cracked in ways Maya had never seen before. Her hands fidgeted, her shoulders tightened, and her smile, so famously flawless, wavered under the billionaire's unrelenting stare. Where did this come from? Sterling's voice was calm, but there was danger in its steadiness. He was not a man who tolerated betrayal. Cassandra exhaled, attempting to regain her usual charm. A grant, please. It's absurd to think I would put such a thing in your office. Someone is trying to frame me. Can't you see? She's a child, she added, gesturing toward Maya. Children imagine things, exaggerate, but Sterling wasn't convinced. He pressed a small button on the device, and the lens lit up with a faint red glow. Hidden recordings flickered onto a nearby monitor. The camera had been active for days, capturing private meetings, financial documents, even fragments of conversations Sterling assumed were confidential. Every secret of his empire was stored within it. And then came the moment that shattered Cassandra's denial. On the recording, her reflection appeared, leaning into the desk, adjusting the ribbon, whispering into her phone as she placed the package exactly where Maya had found it. The color drained from her face. Explain this, Sterling demanded, his voice dropping lower. Cassandra stumbled for words. I didn't mean, it's not what it looks like. I was pressured, Grant. People wanted information, powerful people. They promised me everything if I helped them. I never wanted to hurt you, I swear. Her words spilled out in frantic desperation, but the evidence was undeniable. For the first time, Maya saw Grant Sterling not as an untouchable billionaire, but as a man betrayed. His shoulders sagged, his expression hardened, not with shock, but with the quiet devastation of realizing that love had been a mask, trust a weapon turned against him. Helen, who had quietly entered after noticing her daughter's absence, pulled Maya close, her protective arms tightening. She whispered, "Stay quiet," but her eyes wide with disbelief fixed on Cassandra's unraveling. "You were going to marry me," Sterling said, voice like steel. "You share my name, my home, my future, and all the while you were selling me to the highest bidder." Cassandra's tears came fast, her perfect image collapsing in seconds. "I had no choice," she cried. "Do you know what they would have done to me if I refused? You don't understand." But Sterling cut her off with a raised hand. "I know. You don't understand. This house runs on loyalty. And loyalty is something you cannot fake." The silence that followed was suffocating. Cassandra's excuses died in her throat, her body trembling as security, summoned quietly by Sterling, entered the study. For once, the cameras she had relied on to capture secrets were turned against her. Maya clutched her mother's hand. She felt fear, yes, but also something else, vindication. The truth she had seen, the detail no one else noticed, had finally been revealed. She was no longer invisible. She had unmasked the fiancé who would have destroyed everything. The Sterling estate would never be the same again. The Sterling estate was never quiet. Yet in the days after the confrontation, silence seemed to linger in its halls. Cassandra was gone, escorted out under the watchful eyes of security, her name already fading from society's lips as quickly as it had once risen. The headlines spoke of betrayal, of scandal, of another fallen star in the billionaire's orbit. But within the walls of the mansion, the story was different. Grant Sterling walked with heavier steps, his brilliance no longer shielded by the illusion of a perfect partnership. Trust, once given freely, now felt like a fragile glass that could shatter with the slightest pressure. Yet for all his pain, one truth had taken root. It was the maid's daughter, Maya, who saved him. Helen tried to shield her child from the weight of it all, but Sterling himself knelt before Maya one evening in the study. "You saw what no one else did," he said softly. "You protected me when I didn't even know I needed it. Never doubt your eyes, Maya. Never doubt your worth." For the first time, the invisible girl was seen not as a servant's daughter, not as an afterthought, but as the one who uncovered the truth. The mansion still gleamed with marble and chandeliers, but Maya understood something no amount of wealth could hide. Perfection is fragile, and secrets cannot live forever in the shadows. She had uncovered more than a hidden camera. She had uncovered the cost of lies, the fragility of trust, and the power of courage in the smallest of voices. And in the quiet heart of a child who noticed everything, the empire of a billionaire had been saved.